All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this webinar on a Tuesday morning. I'm actually in Edmonton at a hotel at the moment. So this is the first time I've actually done a webinar on a hotel Wi-Fi. So I'm really hoping that the Wi-Fi connectivity here does not fail me. And at home, my home office, I have kind of some redundancy. Here at the hotel, I don't. So I'm trusting that things will go well. So again, I thank you very much. I value your time. We're going to get started here right away. And so this webinar is about transforming team accountability, alignment, and results in 90 days. So I don't know what you thought when you saw the title for this. I realize it's a bit of an audacious claim that maybe some people wonder what on earth could he be talking about. But really from experience, what I'm about to show you is something that I've seen. There are some things that exist within teams today that if we could change some of those things, we could create some dramatic performance improvements. We could dramatically improve accountability and alignment, and it will have a dramatic impact on our results already within a 90-day time period. So it's not an audacious claim that I'm making without some experience, without some justification. And so I'd like to dive right in and help show you and share with you what I've come to know and learn. So just to give you some little bit of an introduction, my name is Stephen Brandt. I'm the Managing Director for DOOR International in Western Canada, technically. DOOR is a global training organization, exists in over 50 countries. Last year celebrated their 35th anniversary around the world. And because of DOOR's role, we also provide leadership management development for training for a number of global companies that you might well know, like Microsoft, IBM, Harley Davidson, Unilever, Accenture, Hyundai, Sony, and many more. And so because of that reach, we also have developed these exclusive relationships with premium intellectual property. So what I'm going to be showing you today is developed by a company called Partners in Leadership. They're known as the Accountability Training and Culture Change Company. And so what I'm also showing you has also won a number of awards. There's a 2014 Gold Award from Chief Learning Officer magazine for excellence in content. There's a 2015 Gold Award for Excellence in Social Learning. There's an International E-Learning Association Award as having been evaluated as the best blended learning solution that they checked out or evaluated in 2015. And what you don't see here is an additional award from 2016, which is another silver from Chief Learning Officer magazine for excellence in content. And this content and some of our training and culture change work has been leveraged in a whole number of well-known organizations that you would already know. So it's just to establish some credibility that this was not developed just yesterday. And so Partners in Leadership has written, they're now actually beyond 5 best-selling books, but 3 are kind of the key. Each one represents a different track of our accountability training. What we're going to be talking about today is from the Oz Principle, which came out in 1994. Back in 1994, if you went to Barnes & Noble, you would have had to go to a brick-and-mortar store because Amazon.com did not exist yet then. And if you looked up organizational accountability, you would have found only one book, The Oz Principle. It was the first book really in that genre on that topic, and it's been the perennial bestseller. It's been a management leadership bestseller every single year ever since it came out, and it's really considered kind of the seminal work. Some of the language that we'll use, you might have realized, hey, I've heard that somewhere before. It's because we kind of created that language. The Others track, which is based on a book called How Did That Happen, is the basis for our Holding Others Accountable track. That's for people who have substantial deliverables to make. How do you hold other people accountable effectively? And then our Change the Culture, Change the Game really outlines some of our culture transformation work and models and methodologies. So just by the numbers, Partners in Leadership, this work has been delivered in about 106 countries, top pharmaceuticals, about half of the Fortune 50, literally millions of people trained. I think at last count it was well over 3 million people. So here's the premise for today's discussion. And so I'm going to outline these steps as to what's involved, I think, in transforming team accountability, alignment, and results in 90 days. So the first thing is really important to get clarity of key results, starting with the leadership first. Second, to cascade that clarity of the key results to the team. Third is to align the team towards key results. 4 is to create the steps to accountability and moving everybody above the line. So we'll explain that as we go on as well. And number 5, identify the highest leverage accountability gaps and then to close them with SOSD. So I will explain also what that involves and what that means. So here's part of the premise that we talk about. Accountability begins by clearly defining the results. So our experience is, our research shows, and we experience this all the time, people are not really clear on what really are the key results. So what really constitutes winning? So we have lots of sports metaphors. We're heading into the playoff season for hockey, and both Edmonton and Calgary are quite excited that their teams have now made the playoffs for the first time in quite a long period of time. So we've got a lot of hockey playoff fever maybe happening within Alberta, which is awesome. It's well needed. But everybody knows what constitutes winning when you're playing hockey. In a lot of organizations, a lot of people show up and they don't know what winning means. So we come across many organizations that have KPIs or a balanced scorecard. And throughout them, if you have, let's say, so I'm going to ask you a question and cause you to think a little bit. If you have a balanced scorecard or a list of KPIs, that's, let's say there are 15. So that's not an unusual number. Let's just say, even just to make it simpler, let's say there were only 12. So if you have 12 KPIs and you achieve 9, how well do you think you did? Most people would say, well, I did fairly well, right? I achieved 3 out of 4, 9 out of 12. That's a pretty good number. But then the question remains, well, it depends on which 3 you missed. And so who gets to decide, which KPI has more importance than another KPI? And if you miss 9, hit 9 and miss 3, who gets to decide which 9 you hit and which 3 you miss? And is that acceptable or not, and to what degree? Similarly, if you hit 8 and you miss 4, or you hit 10 and you miss 2, what is the degree? So the whole premise is that effectively what we're saying is that if you have that for your method of keeping score, you have not really created clear accountability. We've created a situation where we've got a lot of wiggle room, a lot of waffle room. We've got a lot of explanations and justifications and excuses and a whole lot of other things that can come into the play just to explain why we did what we did, but we have not really effectively created clear accountability. Accountability for a key result is a little bit different. So we talk about key results as being just one of just a few organizational results that are prioritized as most important. So in hockey, for example, you know that penalty killing is one thing, penalty minutes is another thing, goals against. There's a whole number of other metrics, but at the end of the day, what really, really counts is the number of pucks that go into the net and making sure you do that more than the other team. So here's some examples of just really key results. So most of you, I was just looking at the list of attendees. There's quite an interesting group of people from a dynamic range of organizations, from engineering companies to energy companies to utility companies to municipal governments to a wide variety of different things. But there are some results that are just absolutely more key than any. So, for example, safety. Is safety one of those low priority, maybe not, things that can happen? No, safety is quite often very high up on people's radar. That's a key result. If you're in a for-profit organization, clearly you have to be making money. You have to be working in the black, not in the red. So you need to make sure you're making cash. Otherwise, you require credit. Somebody's got to finance you. Capital might flee from you. Some of you are in organizations that I've read about in the news lately for either having been acquired or merged or something else. So all of these deals happen because there are people willing to throw money at our organization because they believe in our purpose, but there are certain results that they're really, really looking for. They don't care about KPIs. There's only 2 or 3 things that are really most important. So this is really focusing on key results. So Partners in Leadership has done this workplace accountability study, the largest of its kind, with about 40,000 participants. And in that, we asked a simple question. We asked, are key results clearly defined and understood throughout your organization? Now, some of you might, depending on how cynical, how long you've been around, I'll just throw the answer out at you because we're not face to face and I can't ask you and play around with this a little bit, but 85% said no. So that means that 85% of the people that we polled in this broad study, which is again the largest of its kind, they show up for work, they have activities and things that they need to do, but they really don't. If you really ask, do you know when you've left the building at the end of the day, have you won? Or did you propel your team, your organization towards winning, yes or no? And how do you know that? 85% of the people really don't know. And then we ask people a supplementary question. We say, do priorities change frequently, creating confusion around the key results you need to achieve? So this is, we start out with the key results, but we move into the month of February, and the February crisis hits, and oh my gosh, we're in a different state, and now February hits and there's a different fire that comes up that needs to get put out, and then April happens, and then there's something else that's going on, that some project has been delayed, and it becomes the case du jour of what we're doing. So do these things change frequently? 87% said yes, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you here, I'm going to do a little bit of a poll, and I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask for your involvement. And so I'm going to open this question, and so I'm going to launch this poll. So the question is, everybody in my organization knows our really key results, i.e. what it means to win every day. So I'm going to ask you, please just pause a moment, quick, pick up your mouse, your keyboard, your whatever, select an option. Ideally, I want to try and get over 85, 90% of the people to get their answers in here really quickly so that we can move on, because obviously it's a little time sensitive and I want to respect your time. And then we'll kind of share what the result is. So we're up to 51% now, please. So there's some people kind of sitting back, maybe wondering. And just so you know, your votes are anonymous. So it's not like, hey, so-and-so from XYZ company said, oh man, we're really adrift. Just so you know, there will be no connectivity between your results and the actual numbers. So there's still a few more people. If I can get you, please take your pointer clicker, add your comment, your opinion, so we get this all in. All right, just a few more seconds. There's still a few more people, so please get your vote in. Okay, I'm going to close it now. Okay, so I am going to share this poll result. So what you see here is 27% of you say, we think we have a pretty good idea. But 2/3, so this is really about 2/3, we're not as clear as we could be. So, I think a lot of what you're saying is really correlates fairly directly with what our, broader poll is that a lot of people are just really not sure. We're not really clear. So being more clear could make a dramatic difference. 3%, so somebody feels in a terrible state. I feel sorry for you, whoever that was. We're adrift. We have no direction. So there's a little bit of cynicism going on there. And at the end of the day, especially like some days more than others, people feel more cynical than others. So now I'm gonna hide this. I'm gonna learn from past mistakes, and I'm gonna move on. So if I do anything wrong, I'm going to ask you to please let me know in the questions. Okay, so carrying on, in our work, we talk about the difference between activity and results. So activities are the actions that people take that lead to results. So that's pretty clear. Everybody's involved in activity. I mean, when you show up, theoretically, whether you're talking on the phone, whether you're on the internet, whether you're checking email, whether you're doing whatever, your work day and then some, or maybe minus some, whatever, is full of different activities. So those activities lead to results. And if I ask a room, does all activity lead to results? Inevitably, everybody shouts out initially the answer no. But then as I pause and remain silent, then some people say, well, yes, but maybe not the result we're looking for. And so that's basically what we say, is that results are the desired and undesired outcomes of taking actions. So this is another paradigm shift that we really try to focus on, is so much work, so much effort in the workplace. This is very largely engineering kind of crowd. Quite often I do this with a very HR-oriented crowd. And the HR people are all about the job. And I'm sure you all have a job description. The HR people make sure that everybody's got a job description. You know what is your job, what isn't your job, what you're supposed to do, what's expected of you, blah, 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 blah. And everything that is then done in the organization as far as the aids and the training and the support and the performance reviews and everything else is aligned around you doing the job. But as we pointed out, is when we're not really clear on what the result is, what we're really trying to achieve, this achieving the result thing sits over there as kind of almost a separate thing. Like the number, the sales number, the revenue number, the profit number, the whatever, is almost like it's the CFO's job, it's the sales director's job, it's the project leader's job, it's the CEO's job, it's somebody else's job. But we want to create a bit of a paradigm shift where we say that doing the job is achieving the result. This becomes incredibly important in what we're trying to achieve because this creates a much greater alignment. So here are some of the limitations of just doing the job. If we, let's say we're in an organization and we get these people that are in their job descriptions, they have their job, these are their roles, and assuming we get busier. So we're in an organization, some things come up, say, oh my gosh, somebody needs to take care of this. We ask, are things falling through the cracks? Yes. So there's something that has come up that needs to be attended to that's not currently somebody's job. So we need to get somebody to do that. And clearly, the more that comes up, the more we need somebody to fill that role. And assuming that we are making sufficient funds to cover that, then what many people would do is to say, well, then our next thing is we need to add more people. So we add more people, we get more people doing their job, they're filling the gaps, they're doing these new things that have come up that need to be attended to, but things still fall through the cracks. And while things are still falling through the cracks, then, assuming we're making money and we're not in, some terrible constraint, then again, we hire some additional people. So we now have more people filling more roles of other things that come up that need to be attended to and whatever else. And you can well imagine, like in your organizations, as you get bigger, then all of a sudden you have people coordinating United Way stuff, you have people communicating this, and you've got people doing roles of things that you didn't have when you were a smaller company. Maybe some of you experienced it. You've got people in roles in a bigger company that you just simply didn't have in roles in a smaller company because, somewhere along the line we thought, hey, we need somebody to do this. But the limitations of that are everybody's doing their job and things still fall through the cracks. And so what we want to try and create is this power of joint accountability. It's this concept that when we get more people aligned all towards some bigger key results, they're self-accountable and they're mutually accountable to achieve a certain much bigger result, then we get these bigger results that we wouldn't achieve otherwise. So I'm going to share with you this little exercise. I'm going to have to explain it. We would do it differently if we were in a room. And the reason why I add this is let's say I gave you and a coworker, so we put you into pairs, and I gave you the following instructions. So I gave you all a blank piece of paper. I put you in pairs, so you're working with a partner, and I say you start with 2 vertical and 2 horizontal lines. And here's the game. The game is to win, and how you win is by getting points, and I'll tell you how to get points. You get points by using symbols. When you get 2 symbols in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally of the same symbol, you get 1 point. If you get 3 symbols in a row, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally in a row of the same symbol, you get 2 points. So now you have 60 seconds, and then I tell you to go get points, and let's see which team wins. So inevitably, this is really quite funny to do in a group. I encourage you to maybe do so yourself and see what the result is. But inevitably, some people look at this and they think, oh, I know this. I know what we're doing. The game that we are playing is tic-tac-toe. So we're using X's and O's. And based upon this, they'll draw 2 big horizontal, 2 big vertical lines. They'll play 1 game of X's and O's. If they're maybe a little more aggressive, they'll say, well, we need to play at least a game on each page. And then they might even be a little smarter, and then they think, well, we'll flip the page over, we'll play another game, and we'll add up our points. But then there are some people that say, well, wait a second. He didn't say the game was X's and O's. He just said symbols. And he told us to make the horizontal. So some will take the horizontal and vertical lines and they'll play multiple games of X's and O's. So they'll take a page and they'll have 20 games of X's and O's on the page. And so they, have done something quite different. Then there are other people who say, well, he didn't tell us it was X's and O's at all. He just told us to start with these two horizontal and vertical lines and to use symbols. And so they will take the page and they will write these X's and O's or whatever other symbols all around the circumference of the page from the outside all the way in, and then they end up getting this almost infinite number of points. And so we use this little exercise to demonstrate a model that we actually put in all of our accountability training. All 3 tracks we show this. This is ridiculously paramount in our culture track. We call it the results pyramid. So at the top, everybody in the room, everybody who plays, everybody who's showing up, everybody who works for our company is getting some results. And our team and our organization is getting some results. The results that we're getting are a function of the actions that people are taking. So how people are acting, the things that they are doing, how aggressively they're doing, how they play, how they show up, basically are their actions that determines our results. So we may have policies and procedures in place that maybe sort of confine, restrict, or are intended to empower or whatever. Those all sort of happen at the actions level. But it's ultimately our beliefs that drive our actions. So if you believe this was tic-tac-toe and you believe that there were certain rules of this, then those beliefs will drive your actions, which will ultimately create your results. Beliefs, this is really the key part that we really focus on, is the area that we most need to work on. Because at the end of the day, if you have a belief that certain things are permissible or not permissible or rewarded or not rewarded or acceptable or not acceptable or desired or undesired, whatever the case is, I can communicate to you all kinds of beliefs, but you hold your beliefs. You totally own them yourself. I cannot force you to change your belief, but you yourself can change your belief in a heartbeat. And that's where the power is. Your belief will change your actions, which will impact your results. And ultimately, it's your experiences. So in a room, I could say, well, let me give you an example of how this would work. Let's say I'm your new CEO, and I tell you, hey, I want to hear everybody's input on this. I want to hear all of your ideas. I really want to know what you're thinking. Please, everybody speak up. Tell me what you're thinking. There's no such thing as a bad idea. I'm sure you've heard that phrase before. And so if I ask the room, I want to hear your ideas, as a new CEO, I'm giving you this belief that I want to hear your ideas. This is what I'm trying to communicate to you. But I say this to point out that it is your belief that you hold that determines what you're going to do. Do you believe me or not? So some of you might be new in the workplace and fairly naive or just very positively oriented, and to say, well, unless you demonstrate anything otherwise, I will absolutely believe you. And so I will speak up and I will share with you my ideas. Some of you might have some prior experience and you might be a little more cynical. You say, well, I don't really believe you until you prove to me the difference. So one is willing to adopt the belief, and the other is, I need evidence to be able to adopt the belief. There's 2 totally different methods. So now let's say I ask for your ideas. The first person to offer an idea says, well, I think we should really change the process for how we get the designs approved, because I think we need to shorten that. And if we were to just give that to one person instead of 3 people, would be much better off. And now if in front of everybody I say, well, that's a really dumb idea, we need 3 people to sign off on it because that's what creates the integrity for our documents. I've just given you this huge experience of how I just summarily dismissed somebody's idea, embarrassed them in front of the room, and now I've cemented this belief that, oh my gosh, you don't ever want to open your mouth if I'm ever asking for ideas again. And that experience becomes ridiculously powerful, which creates your belief, which becomes very strong, which will absolutely drive your actions. There's no policy, procedure, communication in the world that I can do to get you to behave any differently than what your belief will do. And so we put this plane into this thing to show, we call this the leadership trap. that all too often a leader says we're trying to get a certain result, and if we're not getting a certain result, we go to the actions level, which means now we communicate differently and we start changing the messaging and we implement new policies and procedures and all of the things quite often around Lean and Six Sigma and continuous improvement and all of these other ideas are very often done at the actions level. In fact, we see a lot of culture work that's trying to be done at the actions level by saying, hey, let's have fun Fridays and breakfast Mondays and sandal Thursdays and Habitat for Humanity in April and whatever else. But it's only when we start working on the beliefs do we actually start changing culture. So we kind of show this to say that culture resides down here. We really need to create people's beliefs. And for us, we really use this to show that if we want to create a culture of accountability, or we want to put anything into the culture, anything that we want to do, that we want to ingrain into the DNA of the organization, we have to use this model. We use this model with phenomenal power in our culture transformation work. We can totally transform an organization's culture just primarily using this model, obviously together with some other methods. But so what we ultimately want to do is, right now we might have these people working in different silos, different teams. You've got finance people, you've got accounting people, and you've got your sales people, you've got your engineering group, and you've got your delivery group, and you've got whatever, and they're all working with different means and ends and and they're not quite aligned. And what we want to try and get is that everybody's aligned towards the same set of key results. So again, I am going to open another poll. And so if you'll bear with me here, I'm going to open this poll. And so I'm going to go to talk about alignment. And I'm going to launch this poll, where this poll asks the question, or says, alignment of people across functions to achieve key results. So you've got 4 options here. I'm going to ask you to please take a look at those options and quickly make your selection, so we get a huge percentage of people voting. We get the results in fairly quickly, and then we can sort of talk about it and then move on. So completely and fully aligned, or greater alignment would provide a greater result. We have silos, or it's every man and woman for themselves. That would be So again, your results are your answers are confidential. We're not going to say, hey, somebody at such and such a company said this or that. So please do share your votes. We're up to 72% now. There's a few holdouts, so please, if you're just kind of on the fringes, quickly take a look, put your vote in, and let's get it closed off. I'd like to usually try to get at least 80%. So give you just a couple more seconds, because we want to know what the audience is thinking, right? So everybody voting. Few more seconds, quick, get your vote in, look at all the answers. Okay, I'm gonna close it off in 10 seconds. So this is helpful for you to know. This, everybody that's on the webinar today, what they're thinking. Just, I think the attendees here today are all from Alberta. So this is a good snapshot of Alberta. And actually, quite honestly, I think most of the attendees here for today's webinar, because I don't think I promoted this really anywhere else, they're all from APEGA. So this is really from your own association, members that you really get to look at. So I'm going to close it. I'm going to share with you the results. So you can see here, 28% say greater alignment would make an impact, would provide greater performance. And again, 2/3, we have silos and we really should improve. So what you're seeing here is one of the things that we talk about is we really focus on trying to create alignment. And so, I started with this audacious claim, but part of what we know going into this is largely what you're representing in these results is that 2/3 of organizations, any organization we go into, have these silos where people are hoarding resources and they're almost working against each other. It's almost like defense and offense are on different teams as opposed to being part of the same team. And so if we can change that narrative, if we can change that focus, if we can change that alignment, which I think we do quite effectively, we create a dramatically different outcome. So this just further speaks to how we want to try and create an impact within organizations. Okay, so thank you everybody. I'm gonna hide that poll and we're gonna move on. And then we introduce here our steps to accountability model. This is when we talk about accountability, this is really what we're talking about in our frame of reference. So we have this model that was developed. If you pick up the Oz principle that was first published in 1994, I think it's on page 11, you'll find this model. And if you've ever heard the phrase above the line, below the line in reference to accountability, you can thank us because that's really our work. In fact, it's our trademarked language. So what we show here is that we start with the line. And what we say is below the line we have the blame game, and above the line we have the steps to accountability. So below the line, the results that I'm getting are a function of what the environment is allowing me to do. It's a function of me operating within my environment. Above the line, I'm taking more control of my results despite my environment. I'm impacting and influencing my environment to change and to decide my results. Below the line, we're feeling like we're not in control, like other influences and other people and other people's decisions and other people's directions, other people's performance are in control of the results that we can deliver. Whereas above the line, we're going out and we're influencing and we're exerting some level of control upon others and again, our environment and other people and their performance in order to ensure we achieve results. Below the line, we feel like we're being acted upon. Everything that's happening is happening to us and it's acting upon us. Whereas above the line, we're actually projecting outward and we're acting upon our environment to change, again, the results. Below the line, we're feeling like a victim, like things are happening to us and they're beyond our control and we only have limited ability to influence. Whereas above the line, we're feeling empowered. We're feeling like we are in control. So we get into this game, and so I actually put this out a little while ago to say, hey, take the blame game challenge. If you think your organization is effective, I challenge you to take the blame game challenge. I could come into any organization, I bet I could do this in Google, and describe, these are just some examples of things that are below the line behavior, and show you just how often this happens. Because we know from experience that the environment creates tremendous pressure to keep putting people below the line. So cover your tail, for example. There are organizations and people where somebody got in trouble for this or that. And so, or we came from an organization where people can readily get in trouble for this or that. So we're covering our tail even in advance of something. Finger pointing is where, it wasn't me, it was somebody else. And, this was in so-and-so's court and this was their decision. And so we're assigning blame somewhere else besides us. Below, ignore, deny is another one where, man, I didn't understand. I didn't get the memo. I didn't understand. That's what you wanted. Oh, you really wanted it by when? You wanted it done this way? Or, I didn't get the memo. I didn't get the message. That wasn't clearly explained or articulated to me. There's a whole lot of examples of that. It's not my job where, it's somebody else's job that, this wasn't up to me to do. This was somebody else's thing. I thought somebody else had this under control, or I assumed that by the time I got to here that XYZ would already be done or covered. That was not, there's some other dependency or contingency, or I think many of you work on projects, right? So you have things that are within your ballywag, within your project, where you've got your name in some sort of cell that says this is what you're doing, and you're assuming that it's kind of like running a relay, right? If you're just kind of standing there at the 300-meter line and you're waiting because the guy running the second 100-meter has to pass you the baton. If he doesn't show up or if he shows up late, then you can say, well, that's not my job. Confusion. Tell me what to do. It's again, I don't really know. Here's an obstacle. Oh my gosh, we didn't plan for this. You didn't tell me this would happen. There's just so many examples of that. Wait and see is, I sent it off for approval. I sent an email. I left a voicemail. I sent it off. It's above my pay grade and things will turn around. Things will catch up. Things will improve. The economy will get better. The weather will get better. The construction will get better. The contractor, the vendor, the whatever will all get better, and it'll all come together eventually. There's a ton of environmental influences that keep pushing us down here. And our experience is we can go into any organization, show them just how often this happens, being what in these areas that we call below the line. And what we want to say is that it's not a character flaw to go below the line. In fact, it's quite normal. It's quite natural. It's a natural place to go. Nobody really wants to sort of stand up and say, yep, I'm the guy that needs the whack on the head. I'm the mole, go ahead and whack me, right? So we talk about that in reference to accountability. So we've got this huge environmental pressure to put us below the line. And again, it happens all the time, but it's not effective to stay there. And this is the challenge, is that this is ingrained in the culture of virtually every organization, that this happens and it's accepted and it's permissible. And so quite often a good excuse is just as good as a good result. And we really want to change that. So we play this game called blame storming, where we kind of go through this. But instead, we want to move everybody above the line. And above the line, we talk about the steps to accountability. So I mentioned to you that most of our work on the accountability that I'm talking about here comes from the Oz principle. I'm assuming many of you have watched the movie The Wizard of Oz. I know that the Motion Picture Association had done a survey, and there were the two most beloved movies of all time, believe it or not, were The Wizard of Oz together with The Godfather. I know they're very different genres, but in The Wizard of Oz, they're going down the yellow brick road to find the wizard, and the idea is the wizard's going to solve all of their problems. And the Oz principle is effectively this: there is no wizard, period. There's nobody that's going to come, wave a magic wand. There's no magic thing that's going to suddenly happen, that's going to suddenly, give this, the heavens will open. There'll be this great aha kind of a chorus, and everybody will know what they're supposed to do, and everything will be clear, and it will all be good, right? So these steps to accountability they relate to the characters in the movie. So having the courage of the lion to see it, having the heart of the Tin Man to own it, having the brains of the straw man to solve it, and then like Dorothy, who had to click her heels to just do it, because that's what she needed to do to get to Kansas. So that's what the steps to accountability are. Now, of course, in a workshop, we would kind of go through and delve into this to give practical tools and skills around these. But for right now, I'm just going to highlight some best practices. So for seeing it, obtaining the perspectives of others, it's incredibly important. Being open and candid in your communication, not sugarcoating, beating around the bush. Asking for and offering feedback. I could go on about this. We spent a lot of time in the workshop on this. There is no thing I can think of that has a more direct and impactful correlation to performance improvement than feedback. And yet, when you look at most organizations, if I were to ask 1,000 people, when do you get feedback? What do you think the answers are that I would get? Of 1,000 people, 950 would say either I get feedback when things go wrong, when I screw up, or the rest would say once a year at my annual performance review at its prescribed time. And that's all we give feedback. And yet we now live in a world where, do you work with millennials? Do you have many millennials on your team? I mean, they're becoming the biggest single workforce contingent in our economy here pretty quick. And these people, well, heck, I do it myself. You go to a restaurant, you take a picture of your meal, you put it up on Facebook, say, wow, look at this. People like it or they dislike it. They add their comments. You go onto Yelp and you add some feedback. I'm at a hotel. They'll ask me for feedback. I'll probably put some on a Google review, blah, blah, blah. So we're giving feedback every single day, everywhere we go. And yet somehow we think it's okay to only give people feedback in the workplace when they screw up or once a year. And it just doesn't work, especially from a performance standpoint. So there's a huge boost that we can do there. Anyway, I can harp on that one because I'm a bit of an evangelist for that. That's a huge thing for me. Hearing the hard things, that you openly see the reality of the situation, just really getting honest perspective. Owning it, being personally invested, learning from successes and failures, ensuring that what you do is aligned with key results, and acting on the feedback that you receive. And this is not somebody making you own it. This is you deciding to own it. So we're going to get into that too. Solve it. Constantly asking, what else can I do? This right here is $1 million question. We go into organizations, and again, we use that results pyramid model. We want to create a culture where everybody is continually asking, what else can I do? So again, going back a couple of steps on the feedback, we want to put feedback into the culture. We also want to get people asking, what else can I do? And make that part of the culture. Because when they're asking that, that's worth $1 million right there. Constantly asking. The short answer is there's always something, and the more people you can get engaged and aligned to do that, the more you're going to discover. creatively dealing with obstacles and taking the necessary risks, and as I just sort of skipped over, collaborating across functional boundaries. So we're not using all the resources that we have within our organization to help solve problems. If you've ever been to a site called Wikipedia, this is the biggest thing on the planet that put actually a whole Microsoft line of business out of business, their whole Encarta encyclopedia, because people all around the world, for no remuneration or reward whatsoever, contributed to this online thing to help create this phenomenal resource called Wikipedia. You know, we really help people show just how much help and resources there are available when you keep asking, what else can I do and who else can I involve to solve problems? Do it. This is doing the things I say I'll do. Some people think that this is accountability all by itself. We suggest it's only one best practice. Staying above the line by not blaming others. Tracking progress with proactive and transparent reporting. I deal with a lot of people, especially in government levels, who think that transparency is accountability. It's not. In fact, I wrote an article and kind of shamed a little bit, I think, the CEO of TransLink in BC, who created this accountability center, created a whole bunch of results that are, and called it the accountability center. Well, you know what? It's transparency. It's giving information. I'll give you that, but it's certainly not accountability because there's not a single commitment. In fact, when the CEO was asked what they will do or what they will deliver, he was incredibly wishy-washy on his response. Anyway, so it's not accountability, it's only transparency. Building an environment of trust. So one of the paradigms that we change is getting people to think about accountability differently. So accountability, most people are common, is subject to having to report, which means I have a leader who holds me accountable, or I have direct reports and I hold them accountable. And it's something that is imposed upon us. In fact, the verbs that are in the definition are directed towards somebody or something. And so the typical accountability question is, who is accountable for failing to achieve the result? And I'm sure you're quite familiar with that, right? So when the proverbial stuff hits the fan, when something goes wrong and, oh my gosh, we've had this crisis and something has fallen through the cracks and gone horribly wrong, then the question gets asked, who is accountable for failing to achieve the result? And you know what? Many of us are actually guilty of asking the same question. You know, we've had this issue lately around the care of children in the children in the care of government and foster care. There was this very prominent news article about somebody who died while in the care of the government. Her name is now suddenly escaping me. But anyway, everybody's looking for who to blame, right? When we're asking who's accountable for failing to achieve the results, we're looking for somebody to blame. Well, go ahead. Who's going to raise your hand and say, yeah, I'm responsible for the death of that child? Nobody. Absolutely nobody. In fact, the more we do accountability wrong, we create what we call the accountability paradox. The more you try to hold people accountable the wrong way, the less accountable they become. We actually make them to become more clever at being below the line, pointing fingers, laying blame, pretending I didn't know, I didn't understand, whatever else. All those things below the line. The Oz principle accountability question is, who is accountable for achieving the result? Which the short answer for that is everybody. If we now ask everybody in the Ministry of Children's and Family Services, who wants to be accountable for making sure we keep every single child in our care safe? Well, guess what? Everybody, hopefully everybody in the room, their hands go up, right? So we need to create positive accountability. It's a paradigm shift. Accountability sometimes frightens people. In fact, I had somebody recently tell me that, bringing a culture of accountability into our organization would be threatening. Well, it's only threatening if you think it means we're going to be arming the bullies to hold you more accountable in the wrong way, right? So the Oz principle definition of accountability that we work from, it's a personal choice. Remember on that results pyramid, there's beliefs, right? So we can communicate to you that you are responsible and you are accountable and the accountability is with you and there are consequences. And the belief is that we would be working based upon consequences or evasion of consequences, whereas the belief we want people to hold is that you're making a personal choice to rise above circumstances and demonstrate the ownership necessary for achieving key results, to see it, to own it, to solve it, to do it. And one of the key things here is we say, how often do things go perfectly according to plan? I think everybody agrees the short answer to that is pretty well never, right? something always happens. Murphy's Law kicks in, or there's always unforeseen circumstances. So the circumstances, they are almost inevitable. We have data that shows that when circumstances come up that were not planned for, what is it, like 50, 60% of the people quickly get stuck. And a full 25% of the people will go absolutely nowhere. They will expect you to solve the problem for them. So collectively, that means that the vast majority of people, when these circumstances arise, they quickly get stuck and they need somebody to intervene and to help them. Whereas accountability says, I'm going to take this result. I know there are things that are going to come up, but I'm going to overcome them. I'm going to own it, and I'm going to make sure we deliver the result. So here's a concept that we teach that I think is incredibly valuable. It's accountability gaps. So this is kind of our last key thing here. It's a difference between what is actually occurring versus what we want to occur, which is jeopardizing our ability to achieve a key result. So think about your workplace right now. And imagine, so now I know we went through this exercise that the key results are maybe not totally clear, but if you could imagine what you think is really important, what really needs to happen, right? So with that in mind, take a look at your workplace, your team, your organization, yourself, and say, okay, well, this is what's currently happening today. So this is the reality. But what we really need to have happen in order to get the result we're really looking for is something else. So can you identify in your mind some gaps? Can you think about that? So we help use this tool as a way to change people's frames of reference around how they look at things in the workplace. So we create this view of accountability gaps. So with the results in mind, we look at what's really happening. And if there's this reality that's currently occurring, but what we really need to have happen to make sure we get that result is something different. We need to be engaging differently. We need to be sharing information differently. We need to be responding to things differently. We need to be deciding things differently. We need to be applying resources differently. Whatever the case is, there's something else that we want to occur in order to achieve their key result. We view those as accountability gaps. And we help people look at these in different levels, because there's individual accountability gaps. There's the progress that I need to make versus, the progress that I am making now. There's the team ones, and there's also organizational ones. So those are really kind of the key gaps. So I'm going to ask you kind of the final poll here. I'm going to launch the final poll about accountability gaps, and I'm going to launch this. And when it comes to this, I'm going to ask you basically what this is saying is. So this is about accountability gaps. So please quickly answer these questions and tell me. We have none. Everybody's doing what they need to do. We have some gaps, or we have a number of gaps. So please get your votes in. Again, this is confidential, so we're not going to say, hey, the folks over at Enbridge, or the folks over at Suncor, or the folks over wherever are saying this. There's no such thing, right? So please quickly get your answer in. This will be the last poll, so I'm asking everybody to please participate this to the best degree that you can. Because again, this is as I mentioned before, this is pretty much entirely APEGA members here on this webinar. So this is representative of your association, of your membership. So come on, we're up to 69%. So if I can get a few more people to quickly get their vote in, tell me what you think when it comes to accountability gaps. So this is where we have an existing reality. This is what's presently happening, but we'd really prefer something else or need something else to happen in order to get the result we most need. So I'll give you just a few more seconds, please. If you haven't yet voted, please get your vote counted so that we get it in. Okay, and so I will close it here, and then I'm going to share this result. So again, you can see 37% of you are saying that, well, we have some gaps that we can definitely, and you have to forgive me is because on my screen here, I can't see the full answer that's there, but 37% of you saying we have some gaps that can definitely make a difference. And 48%, so this is close to half, say we have a number of gaps that we really need to close. So again, going back to what I said at the beginning, when we go into many organizations, this is indicative of what we find. There are a lot of gaps. And if we create this mindset that we get people with like radar vision to look at gaps and identify, and a mindset to think of things in terms of accountability gaps where they see a reality, this is what's happening, this is what we need to have happen. How do we close that gap? So let me ask you the magical question. Who do you think is accountable to close a gap when we see one? Well, we could go below the line and we could say it's not my job. It's the leader's job. It's the director's job. It's the vice president's job. It's the general manager's job. It's the CEO's job. It's the CFO's job. It's the COO's job. No. Ultimately, we need to be creating a culture where when we see an accountability gap, because we are self-accountable and we are mutually accountable for a bigger result, right? So we're part of a team. We want the team to win. We're focused on the results. We're now seeing this gap that is impacting the key results of the team. And so while I see this gap that may be happening that's not in my job description, I am self and mutually accountable for making sure that we all help to win and achieve that result, which means that every single one of us needs to rise above our circumstances and demonstrate the ownership necessary to achieve key results. Everybody needs to make that personal choice. And that's really what we're trying to create and achieve when we talk about creating a culture of accountability. And so, from these accountabilities, now hopefully I've closed this gap, closed the poll result correctly. So then we use the SOSD Accountability Tool. So this is part of our methodology, and I didn't really spend time to go into what the see it, the own it, the solve it steps are. But each one of these has a power question, and I'll just speak to them very briefly now because we're getting close to the end of our time. But see it is, what is the reality we most need to acknowledge? What's really happening? What perspectives do we need to get? What feedback do we need to ask for? What do we need to see what's really happening? Have you ever met somebody, and I'm going to ask this in a bit of a facetious way, but for a reason. Have you ever met somebody that you know is really kind of clueless? And you're probably chuckling right now. I know if I ask this question in a room, there's usually a few chuckles. But there's people that we know that, you know, they think they know about finances, they think they know about politics, they think they know about, you know, oil and gas, they think they know about the economy, they think they know about this, that, or the other, but they're really quite honestly clueless. They've got a certain perspective, they've got a limited amount of information, they're getting their information from a limited number of sources, and they're acting based upon that. And so what's the reality we need to acknowledge? What's really actually happening? So this becomes important. We teach methodologies, which includes feedback and some other things, to make sure that we get people to really have the courage to see it. What do I really need to know? Sometimes there's gaps that I have, or skills that I think I have that I'm not quite as good at, or things I need to improve upon that I just need to know, right? And so that's having the courage to see it, own it. How am I or we contributing to the problem or solution? That's the power question, and this is really taking a look at ownership. Are we owners or are we renters? Are we fully engaged or are we somewhat engaged? Are we jumping into the fray or are we sitting on the sidelines? And when we look at our entire team, how is the ownership and engagement level across the team? And where is it potentially lacking and why? So what don't they know, or what do they need to know, or what do they need to understand or appreciate? Or maybe, quite frankly, in some cases, what change do we maybe need to make? Because if you've got a really key result and you've got somebody on board who's not at all committed and they're not bought into the same thing, you know, if you've got a team going into the playoffs now, you can't have somebody to say, well, you know, we made the playoffs, that's cool, that's all we really need. So now we just need to show up, get at least our 4 games, and collect our extra pay. Well, I'm sorry, is somebody with that level of engagement and ownership in the team, do you really want to give them ice time? Absolutely not, right? So you need people who have the goal, the Stanley Cup in mind. Solve it. What else can I or we do? So how else can we approach this? Who else can we engage? What things have we not considered before? What's worked somewhere else? Whose input can we gauge? You know, in this present world, you've got this thing called LinkedIn, where, you know, for any given challenge that you have, there's probably somebody somewhere in the world that you can quite easily reach out to via LinkedIn and ask them to help you solve your problem. They could be in the very same kind of company, in the very same kind of industry, but just in a non-competing environment. And people can share things back and forth. I mean, the world has become incredibly small. Our ability to solve problems nowadays rapidly has dramatically improved. So just think outside the box and think who else could we engage. And then finally, once we have done these things, then we create a plan to say, what am I or we accountable to do by when? Which means ultimately we need to execute. Once we've determined a plan to close a gap, we need to actually close it. We can't just say, oh, that was great, we've identified it, and then let it carry on so that we're having the same conversation 6 months, 12 months from now again, right? So, and the whole premise of this is it's a methodology to take these gaps as opposed to, so this is really, ready, aim, fire, as opposed to fire, ready, aim, or fire, aim, ready. Sometimes people take a problem. Well, so I'll give you a little political example. I don't want to get too much into politics, but there was something that came on the news a while back that said, our education system is failing our First Nations people. And so in it, it provided some statistics, which I'm sure we can all imagine. We've probably heard somewhere along the way that within the cities, First Nations people and their graduation rates dramatically lower than the rest of the population. And when we get into rural areas, the graduation rates of First Nations people is substantially lower than that. And so somebody at the highest level of our government said, man, that's a big problem. We're going to spend $3.5 billion on it. And that's really an example of fire, aim, ready. Just not really looking. If you were to follow this methodology that we teach, what's the reality we need to acknowledge? Like, where do we need to get feedback? What's really going on? We need to really look under the covers. It's a complex, not a simple issue, right? So there's many people we need to engage and involve in trying to really look at the situation. There's lots of places where the ownership level and the engagement level is not nearly where in can it should be, and the importance of it needs to be really identified. We need to get people engaged in the why and the how, and to really get them on board, right? Community leaders and all kinds of other people, and then solving it. There's some innovative, new, different ways of solving problems that we haven't thought of before we need to address. All of these things. So this becomes then our methodology for systematically closing gaps. And so what our premise is that we take the highest leverage gaps. So when we look at the accountability gaps we've identified, there are some that are going to impact our results more than others. So we systematically close those gaps, starting with the highest leverage ones. And that ultimately becomes kind of the premise. So in the OSS principle, we say that only when you assume full accountability for your thoughts, feelings, actions, and results can you direct your own destiny. Otherwise, someone or something else will. And so our experience is there's a lot of people that are out there that are kind of being blown around by the winds and being blown below the line by the forces of the environment. Whereas if we get above the line, we take control of our environment, we change some of these scenarios, we create a dramatic difference. And so I go back to what I started from. If we can create dramatic clarity of key results, leadership first. We were in a room recently with the CEO himself and 10 of his direct reports, and we asked the 10 people, said, okay, I know the CEO's in the room might be a little uncomfortable, but if I was to ask the CEO, what would he tell me the key results are? And we went through the room. And while there are some similarities, there was not consistency. It was not clarity. And we see this all the time. Cascading then that clarity to everybody on the team. Then creating alignment of every single person on the team of what they do instead of their job to the key results. Then we identify the highest leverage gaps, accountability gaps, and we close them with SOSD, see it, own it, solve it, do it. And we move everybody on the steps to accountability, move above the line. So no more below the line. So now when we recognize, if I recognize that I'm being below the line, I have a language and I have a model that I see it, I recognize it, and I go, oh my gosh, that's below the line. I need to move above the line. Similarly, when we recognize in each other peer-to-peer accountability that somebody else is below the line, we call it out in a safe and respectful way. As being below the line, it's not a flaw, it's not wrong, it's just not effective to stay there. So we move each other consistently above the line. We do these things, we create dramatic performance improvements, we totally transform our team's accountability, our alignment, and results within 90 days. So I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. I know that I've now used up the time. At the end of this webinar, there will be a quick little survey. I ask you to please fill out that survey. I will follow up with you also directly, and my contact information will come to you. This webinar has been recorded, and so you should get a follow-up email by the end of the day with an ability to access the recording. Similarly, the people that were unable to attend today should also get that. I'm happy and look forward to following up with any of you. Thank you again so much for your time. I greatly value it, and hope to see you in person, not just virtually, sometime in the near future. So again, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you again soon. Have a wonderful, awesome, successful day.